Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we are going to learn how to bake an occlusion map on our UV'd out low polygon model. So what you can see here is we already have this very low poly treasure chest and it's been triangulated. This is just something I grabbed online, royalty free, just to show you kind of how to do this on a model. I like using models that typically I don't build just because it sometimes shows that you can kind of do this process on anything. So let's go ahead and look at the UVs. This is kind of a very interesting UV because half of it is actually stacked. So you can see that these two UV models are duplicates of one another. So the UVs have been stacked upon one another. And then we have some other areas that are nicely UV'd out as well. So pretty nice. You can see a really clean UV map in the end. And it's really important that when you lay out your occlusion map that you actually also make sure that you lay out your UVs first. There is no occlusion without UVs. Occlusion is actually not based off light. It's based off the distance from one object to another. So some important things for this model is a lot of these things are hollow. So let me do a quick modify center pivot here so you can see what I mean. And I'll hit F. You can see that the bottom part of these pieces that are actually touching, they're hollowed out. We don't need those bottom faces. So make sure that your model is clean and accurately represents, let's go ahead and turn on two-side lighting in here, represents kind of this ability. And you can see it's pretty hollow on the inside here. All right, let's get started with this process. It's super easy. I'm gonna start real quick by deleting all my history by type, just to be safe. And I'm gonna go ahead and apply a shader to all of my objects. Now you can see these are all separately grouped. When I made my UV map, or when this person made their UV map, they placed them all in the same upper right quadrant. So that needs to be done beforehand. But let's grab everything for now. Let's right click, go down to assign favorite material, and let's pick the surface shader. If you've done it correctly, your scene should go completely black. That's good. It doesn't seem like it's good when we're trying to make an all white texture, but you'll see what I mean in a bit. We're going to find out color, and to get this to work, we're going to actually have to, I'm using Autodesk Maya 2016 here, but we're going to have to go ahead and make sure we go to Windows Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager. In this, if I scroll to the bottom, you should make sure that you have Mental Ray loaded. Now you have to download Mental Ray for Autodesk Maya 2016. If you're using 2017, this option just simply is not there. So please keep that in mind. So mine's already loaded. So when I go ahead and hit next to Out Color in my surface shader, I'll go ahead and get the Create Render Node window. And I'm going to go down to the Mental Ray drawer and click Textures, MIB, AMB, Occlusion. So this means, this says MIB, basically ambient occlusion. And I'm going to click that, and I'm going to get a new window in my attribute editor. I'm going to go ahead and set my samples to 32. You can put any power of 2 here, so it could be 64, 128. 32 should do us pretty well. Bright and dark, I'm going to keep default because I want to use this as a multiply pass. I'm going to go ahead and set my spread to 1. That's the spread of the darkness, and the distance of the darkness to 4. So 32, 1, and 4. Now at this point, I can go ahead and bake my map. Now to bake my map, I simply need to make sure my whole object is selected, and I'm going to go to the modeling menu and go to Mesh Display, Batch Bake Mental Ray, and I'm going to hit the option box. And I'll go ahead and reset this just so you guys can see what I see. So we want to bake the selected objects. We want to bake them to a texture. We obviously have multiple objects to bake. We're going to go ahead and bake the shadows as well. And we're going to use Bake Set Override. So go ahead, and while you're doing this, you may want to reference this video back when you do this on your model so you can choose the right options. In color mode, I'm going to choose light and color. I'm going to go ahead and check orthogonal reflection. And I'm going to go ahead and name this chest OCC for occlusion. Let's go ahead and make this a 1K texture. And remember, just like any texture, we're using powers of 2. I'm going to make it a JPEG just so it's quicker. And one really important button you want to make sure you push, especially if you have different pieces to one model in one UV map, is the Bake to One Map checkbox. I'm going to scroll down and I'm actually going to also fill my texture seams to 2, and then I'm going to hit convert and close. Now, the higher your resolution in the X and Y value, the longer this will take. This should only take under a minute with a model of this density. So I'm going to give it a few seconds here as we progress forward with it, and we're going to kind of let this bake out. So what it's doing is actually calculating the distance, and there it is, it's done, between the different objects, and what it's done is actually baked a shading map. Now, there's some inconsistencies to this map, one of which is this area here on the back. What happened is because this person UV'd it and stacked the UVs, if I remove this area, you can see it's calculating the shading and it's actually duplicating to the back. So we can go ahead and erase that later on if we want to. But for now, this will work just fine. So I'm going to click on the new shader that it applied, and you'll notice I have an incandescence shader. If I go ahead and hit view here, and it will open up my map, now I have shading baked in perfectly to my map, which is rather nice. And you can see that little inconsistent area maybe here and here that I was speaking about previously. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I want to open this folder, and one of the things is it allows me to look at is where my files actually went. Now, if I had set my scene correctly, this is actually going to a sword project. If I had set them correctly, it would go to where I needed them to go. But for now, I'll just navigate to that project, and I believe it's render data, mental ray, light map, and there it is under chest occlusion. So I'll remove that real quick. And basically at this point, you can throw this file away. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to open up the scene from the beginning again, just so we can have a fresh start. So how does occlusion maps work? Well, their big thing, if you're using a render engine like Unity, or a game engine, pardon me, you actually have a slot where you can plug in your occlusion separately. If you're trying to use Maya, what you're going to need to do is plug it in to your color map or your diffuse map. So we'll go ahead and we'll open this pretty awesomely painted diffuse map into Photoshop. And what we're going to do is apply the occlusion map on top of it. So this is a really, really nicely painted map. This person definitely has some talents. I'm going to go ahead and apply this map on top of it by simply dragging it on top. And I obviously want to see the really beautiful map, so I'm going to set the blending mode from the occlusion layer from normal to multiply. And watch what it does. Notice how it just shades it a little bit extra. That's really what we're looking for. Now, we don't want to totally get rid of areas, but overall it's going to look nicer. Now, I have some areas I'm going to erase, so I'm going to make sure I rasterize this layer. Pardon me. Right click, rasterize. Get my eraser tool, and I'm going to erase some of these areas in here because I don't want them to kind of mess up the detail that this person did. There we go. So I'm digging that. You can use a mask, you can use whatever you want. I'm going to save this as, we'll call it new diffuse, and we'll make it a JPEG just to kind of keep it separate from everything else. And we'll hit OK. Now let's go back into Maya and see how the new diffuse works in performance to the old diffuse. So to do this, let's duplicate our model, and we'll put them side by side. On this model, I'll go ahead and create a file texture within this piece. So let me go to my 3D models, chest, and we'll do new diffuse. So this will be the new one. You can see it looks rather nice. And this one, let's go ahead and apply a new material to it. So let's grab all the objects and we'll assign a new blend. And let's put the old diffuse without the occlusion on it. And what you'll notice, and this is the diffuse targa, is the new diffuse is just a little more shaded. It has a little more density to it and just a little dark. It's very subtle, but you can definitely see it. If I zoom in, you can definitely see it in areas such as that. So again, a pretty amazing there's a pretty amazing ability to take your mapping to bake your occlusion, and we'll kind of stick with this one over here, and get a really fine-tuned result. So again, to bake occlusion, 1, you need your UV map already laid out in its final position. 2, you need to create a surface shader. 3, you must have a program that works with mental ray. So 2016 Maya works with mental ray, 2017 and above currently does not. Then, once you have it activated, we went ahead and applied a MIB AMB occlusion shader into the out color of the surface shader. We changed our values from 32, 1, and 4 in the max distance and spread. And we went ahead and used mesh display, batch bake, and we went ahead and baked our items using light and color. And we made sure we checked that bake to one map option. Finally, when we were done, we combined our occlusion on top of our current color map and set the occlusion layer to multiply, and voila, there you have it. That is how you bake ambient occlusion to your model. I hope you guys apply this to your own models, and I look forward to seeing the outcome. Catch you guys next time.